Thank you very much. Thanks, Max, for that introduction. Good afternoon, all, and thank you for all the people who have supported me to be here, especially the Center for International Research, Rehabilitation, Information Exchange that Mark mentioned. Of course, the Mark and Becky. In case you don't know that, Mark actually put me up in his house. That was very kind of him. So thanks, Mark. Of course, to the trust of the charity and to all our supporters, including the British Council, the Sierra Leone Police, and the MDAs, these are ministries, departments, and agencies in Sierra Leone, and you know why. I have to thank them at the beginning. In case you're wondering why I'm in this sort of funny costume, today is Friday, and in Sierra Leone, to inject a bit of culture in our society, we have to wear African costumes. So here I am. I'd like to talk today about creating an enabling environment for the same people to participate as equal members of society. The area that I want to cover is really 4 key areas, and then just sort of give almost what I would regard as a motivational talk towards the end, rallying cry. I shall endeavor to perhaps define what enabling environments are through talking about the motivation why we're doing what we're doing now, and actually just look at some of the outcomes, some of the success stories that we've had. I want to put up some statistics. Now, you've got to be very careful about this for 2 reasons. One, some of the stats are maybe a little bit outdated, but the reason for doing this is to contextualize my presentation. You'll see the reason why this becomes clearer later. So Sierra Leone is on the African continent. It's on the west coast, somewhere around here. This is just our coastal arms in the middle, and on the top right-hand corner is our beautiful green, white, and blue flag. So I'm promoting Sierra Leone, really. And you can see it's a republic. We gained independence from the Brits in 1961, and the capital is Freetown. We have a population of 5.7 million. Perhaps, that's obviously gone up now, so that's 6 million we're talking about. We have an area of 72,000 square kilometers, which is about the size of Ireland. So that gives you a bit of a sense of the size of the country. Again, we have a GDP of 2.1 billion. That number, again, has gone up, really. Again, you'll see later why some of these numbers have sort of changed. But we haven't got the latest statistics. 70% of the population obviously live in less than $1 a day. Life expectancy is about 46 for men and about 49 for women. And literacy level is about 35, which gives the literacy level a very high number. Yeah? So infant mortality is about 165 deaths by every 1,000. Again, just to give you comparison, perhaps in the US in 2008 is something like 8 per 1,000, right? In 2011, there's about 6. So Sierra Leone, in 2011, is about 119. So the numbers are really terrible. The HDI, that's the Human Development Index. Obviously, we've been gradually declining. You see a graph later which shows that. But really, I'm really missed and really angry because in 2012, we were supposed to be top 11, and then the US changed the metrics, and so we went back down. So that's my beef with the US anyway. That's not going to take me far anyway. But one of the important things that's very significant for this presentation is this innovation and technology which is growing. And I think throughout this symposium, a lot of people have talked about the technology and the mobile industry. So you can see where we are. And the situation gets worse slightly. So you can see from this graph that Sierra Leone has constantly trailed behind up to about 2010. You can see it's starting to gradually grow now. So there is good news. but I'm afraid I just need to give you a little bit more of the bad news. And the reason why some of these numbers are so dire is because of we had a 10-year civil war, and led by the picture on the left here, led by Charles Taylor, who's the former president of Liberia. And of course, the hallmark of the rebels was about recruiting child soldiers. And these were sort of injected with different types of drugs, and they went on and caused massive mayhem and destruction in the country. And of course, you can see some of these kids are so young, some of them as young as 5 years, and can carry sort of AK-47 and big machine guns. Okay, so this is the situation at the moment. In 10 years ago. Now, you now begin to think, well, what does these pictures have to do anything about what I'm talking about? Well, the war created a lot of, what they call a secondary disability, okay? And as a result of that, we have a lot of amputees, and we have people like this chap who really, in our culture, the parent looks after the kid, and now you have the kid as a caregiver. You have this old man with both his hands sort of chopped off, and you have one of the biggest problems at the moment is sort of mental illness, and you, as a result of the trauma of the war, but also a lot of people sort of going have this mental illness, and the society doesn't know how to deal with it, and mainly what they tend to do is sort of to tie people up and lock them indoors, and that's where they stay. Now, there is a lot of thoughts to how we're going to deal with this problem. I'm not aware of any NGOs, apart from one local NGO which is called City of Rest, and for a population of 6 million to have, we only have one psychiatrist, and now that psychiatrist is now retired. So you can imagine how devastating the situation is. And of course, some of the other parts of the world that people, the picture on the left here, there were people sort of throwing acids on civilians. And so the blind, the people that become blind and visually impaired, again, that's increased. And so on, the people living on using crutches and calipers, again, that's increased. So this is the situation. And now, I hope that sort of sets a good context. But just a little bit more, if you're not bored or sort of worried already, just a closer look at disability generally. The statistics do really require us to act and to act fast. So we have something of really understanding of 500,000 people living with disabilities, people blind, deaf, people with polio, war wounded, as you've seen in the pictures. 70% of Sierra Leone population is unemployed, and we have only about 1/3 of those who were surveyed who are disabled sort of in some form of employment. And 69% of disabled people say they have no income. 50% of women and 34% of men have never been to school. And so about 16%, twice as much as non-disabled people, have some access to healthcare. 39% do not participate in social events. So it is no surprise that then the disabled people constitute a significant proportion of those living in abject poverty in Sierra Leone today. Well, it's not all doom and gloom, is it? This is now where I'm going to be the tourist minister. The Sierra Leone at the same time is really seeing we're rising up from the ashes. It's a country which is growing. We've got 3 democratic elections, which, according to the UN, is a sign that your country is growing, is democratically strong. We've moved from agenda for change to agenda to prosperity, and that's because we have lots of natural and mineral resources. We've got diamond, gold, coffee, cacao, and all of those. And we have a growing number of investors and a lot of mining African minerals. And of course, they've just discovered oil. So that's another. And there is a growing tourism with really awesome beaches you can go around, beautiful sunsets. But all of that is great. For us, what's important is this idea that there is a growing ICT sector. There is a technology that interests us. for the area that we're trying to intervene in. And this is where I take a little bit of a break from all the terrible statistics to all the sort of the area where we are now, which is really fantastic, seeing all this infrastructure, new roads and everything, to telling you about my story. My background is in engineering, but my passion is in disability. And what did they say? You know, everything that's been changed in this world would not have happened if it wasn't passion. So, if you could bear with me a moment to tell you my story. My story started in a Cheshire home. I was born at the age of 5, I contracted polio, and I was taken to a Cheshire home. Before going to the Cheshire home, I was crawling about a mile every day with all 4 limbs. My hands and my legs were on the floor, and I had a bag hung on my neck. But then I was admitted, I became a resident of the Cheshire home. I worked hard, I studied, I developed strong interest in engineering and built things, and then I left the home after about 7 years. I went back to stay with my parents, my uncle. By then, at the age of 5, I'd lost my dad, so I was really just with my grandparents. Then an opportunity came to go to the UK, and this wonderful lady called Mrs. Springer supported me. I was going to say anonymously, but I'll qualify that anonymously at the time. So I did not know only that this was her daughter who's working in a college that I applied to. My application was accepted, but the funding weren't available. Growing up in the Cheshire home, I thought that was the Cheshire home was going to support me. So I came to the US in 2003, about 20 years ago. It won't be another 20 years, don't worry. I went back to the UK with possibly going back to Sierra Leone. And then Margaret told me, this is her husband, told me that you could start your education. I never knew where the money was coming from, and she spent over £100,000 on my education to get the best education, to get the best qualifications. And so all of these people supported me, one way or the other. I became part of the integral family members. And in 2003, this woman died. And so, just like any family member, Margaret called me and said, my mom has been your sponsor. But she wanted that to be a secret. And you can imagine, perhaps I've let the cat out of the bag, but by then, you can imagine goosebumps that I felt. So, the then happened that I was already settled in the UK, working, had a home, had a comfortable lifestyle. But then I decided to go back to Sierra Leone in 2005. And I saw the devastation of the war. The people, the pictures that you've just seen, but more so some of the people that we've been growing up in the home were actually there on the streets of Freetown begging. And I thought to myself, how that could have easily been me had it not been for the wonderful generosity of this woman called Mrs. Springer. So I went back to the UK after 3 weeks holiday, and I spoke to Margaret, and I said, I want to give something back. I want to set up a charity called the Dorothy Springer Trust as a way of giving something back, but also to set it up in memory of your mother. So the charity was registered. It's a fully UK registered charity, and we have a strategy of training and placing people with disabilities into employment. So this is where I come back on my personal story and talk about what we do. But briefly, just to see some of the people that are on the organization, we actually managed to get the first disabled member of parliament, right, Julius Naikopi, onto the board as patron, and then the former British High Commissioner Peter Penkford, who was so instrumental in ending the war, also as a patron. Of course, some of the roles will change, but we have 6 board of trustees, and that's in the UK, and then in Sierra Leone, we have a local liaison committee. So, what happened? Well, this is what happened. In 2011, I gave up my job. I packed everything up and decided to move back to Sierra Leone. Because I thought to run a small charity that we just founded, it's not going to be easy to remotely run it from the UK. So I gave up my comfortable lifestyle and I went back to Sierra Leone, a country that I hadn't lived in for over 20 years. So we decided to embark on this program, the program of creating an enabling environment. An enabling environment, if you look at the UN report on disability, you will see that we talk on chapter 6, it talks about an enabling environment. But what we see as an enabling environment, also from the report, was this area of physical accessibility, social, and attitudinal. So we wanted to approach those through by empowering disabled people to gain the best education in IT. And there are some results. So in 2007, we did the research, and we found out that, there is this growing opportunity. And also disabled people in Sierra Leone were mainly engaged in informal work situation. So we wanted to change that. And so we embarked on providing training scholarships for people with disabilities. We have a very robust system where we send out calls for people to apply. We do a rigorous interview process, and we actually select and provide training of up to £4,000 per student. But they don't leave the country; they stay in the country. We give them the best education so that they will compete like any other person. If anything, they will probably have a competitive edge. So we have recently acquired a multi-purpose state-of-the-art ICT training center whose job is going to be about advocacy, continuing this engagement in employment and business services. And this is some of the things we've been doing and developing ramps and making sure that people with disabilities can access the building, but also have a social enterprise model in it, where disabled people can engage in consultancy, they can develop their own software, they can sort of sell, they can come up with business models of their own and engage them in the center with these advanced skills that they have. So, for example, we have people with, who are blind and visually impaired that now have access to jobs that they themselves can train in basic IT. But that's not all. And so what we actually do, just briefly, is these are the sort of things we do. So we focus on giving the right training, because there's an increase in sector. We provide the best, the right course that disabled people can, but we also focus on advocacy. We have a Disability Act which has been launched, but it's not having any effect at the moment. So we have to advocate, and within that act, it calls for people to be prohibited for disabled, for discrimination and, in terms of employment to be prohibited. But that doesn't happen. So we have to work hard. But the most importantly, we network. We network with employers, with businesses, and we try and tell them and educate them that disabled people can be employed. And you'll see that towards the end of my talk in a minute. We also encourage internships, and we pray to the people of British Council who take on our interns so that develops their interest, their experience. But we also do coaching, so we also educate the disabled people themselves. We train them on how to prepare CVs and cover letters and interview skills, how to become role models. And so, since the program started, we've only been launched in Sierra Leone by the Sierra Leone First Lady, and we trained about 13 disabled people, and all of them have gone on to gain employment. The significance of that is not just the fact that we've gained employment, it is the fact that they've then gone on to support themselves, their dependents, and also the national development, because they pay their taxes. And so this cascade effect is significant. And also in the area of changing attitudes, you remember I said enabling environment. In the area of changing attitudes, we have the first disabled police officers. Can you imagine that? Can you just think a moment and imagine that a guy or coffee as a police officer? What does the public think? Well, a story was one of them was standing in the street in his uniform, and the Minister of Defense just drove by and he had to stop his car. He came down and he went to shook the guy's hand. And he said, "Well done, congratulations." He said, "We in the military should start thinking about that as well." So we've changed the minister's attitude towards disability, didn't we? And of course, a lot of this has been written up, and there is a quote here from Abdulai that what the Sierra Leone police have done by recruiting persons with disability has a much more nuanced and important national impact on a symbolic level, because it allows the countries to move on from a situation of war. Now, there are lots of stories about this. And as I wrap up, this is some of the impact that we've had in the lives of people with disabilities. People who would otherwise be like me, had I not been given that opportunity to go and get a basic education. These are people that would have otherwise been on the streets of Freetown. Combat, since before the training, I wasn't recognized in society. After the training, it added value to me. It has given me a place in society I'm happy with. And there's a detailed quote. He works at the British Council. This is BC checkup concept. When I saw my name, I was a very happy man. We were received with open hands at the police training school. So this is an attitude about his colleagues. And Sylvester, who works as a senior ICT officer, says, "I am well impressed with the scholarship. It is time we prove to society that we can do more than what people expect of us." And I had to bring in the view of the employer. This is what the Inspector General of Police said. If we employ disabled people like able-bodied, then we are breaking the myth of the uselessness of PWDs. Isn't that amazing? I have to say, there's a lot more on that, and I just want to end with this. What we do is about changing the lives of disabled people like the ones that I've just talked about, through this wonderful idea of giving them the best training, the best education, the best knowledge, so that they can compete in society as equal, so that they can compete as equal members of society. But we cannot do that without addressing these issues about physical accessibility, about social issues, about attitudes. And so, as we work towards achieving this goal, we as disabled need to continue to dispel some of the myths about disabled people. So in Sierra Leone, people will say to me, "Well, disabled people cannot be educated. They can't be professionals." Of course we can say disabled people can, because we've shown that. And they will say, "Well, disabled people, when you employ them, how can they contribute? It's just going to cost my business a lot of money to put that ramp, to build that thing." Well, in the UK, when they did the lowering of the ramps and the buses and the trains, did that just affect disabled people? Of course not. It affected older people, mothers with pushchairs, and everybody. So there is a societal benefit that we say to them. And I love this as I am. And this is my rallying cry to all disabled people and to everybody, that there are some fantastic success stories. Professor Stephen Hawking, and I like the World Report on Disability. He gave, I think one of them was on the front page. He's disabled, and he's achieved the best. He's the best brains in the world. And I've tried to localize some of these people. Osman Ba, Elder Jones, the blind guy, well, he sort of is the architect of the Disability Act. Honorable Julius Naikopi, I've mentioned him. David Blomkett in the UK, the blind guy. John Lahai at college. Daniel Gray Thompson, he's a fantastic athlete. And of course, in your country, Roosevelt ruled America on a wheelchair. Lord Snowden, Douglas Bader, Lord Nelson, Ian Drury, Stephen Wonder. So we always say that all we need is to give us equal access to education, job opportunities, to enable us to perform as equal members of society. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
I'm from Nigeria. I would like to ask, apart from the ICT training, do you have any other training you would suggest for persons with disabilities? Because in certain countries like Nigeria, the ICT business is already saturated, so it poses stiff competition, and it's not exactly a profitable venture for persons with disabilities, especially those starting on a small scale. So, do you have any other training you would suggest?
Well, that's the reverse really in Sierra Leone, because in Sierra Leone, the ICT industry is just growing, and we've just had a fiber optic that spans the whole of West Africa. It's been launched in Sierra Leone, but also there is a whole thing about ICT. I don't think that disabled people are always going to be engaged if you channel them through ICT. There's always, I hasten to add that there's always money to be made, because Microsoft, even though the IT will always saturated, Microsoft is always going to be around. All these other software companies are always going to be around, and these disabled people can make software on their own. So that's one aspect. But in direct answer to your question, there are obviously there is informal employment for persons with disabilities, and so generally you see them doing things like tie-dye making or sort of tailoring and all of that. But it's very difficult to sort of give them that extra sort of way of sort of supporting themselves through those means. So we really focus on IT, because we do feel and we believe and we've seen, although the numbers are small, but as I said, the impact is huge. That's the way for disabled people to go. And I quoted a report there. There's somebody who's done some work on spine cord injuries, where ICT is a perfect match for people with disability to develop themselves.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I'm just wondering whether you have explored anything around self-employment.
So explore
self-employment as opposed to traditional employment.
Well, indeed, I mean, some of them are self-employed, so they do troubleshooting. So the database administrators, so they sit in their homes. We provide them with computers, and they're able to sort of troubleshoot remotely.
Thanks so much for your presentation. I just had a question about the advocacy piece that you do. How do you integrate that into all the work that you're doing?
I mean, we look at it as a sort of as a holistic thing. So, in fact, in the UK, we registered under education, advocacy, and poverty reduction. So, as part of the poverty reduction is a byproduct of the other two. Really, we try and build advocacy into everything. So it's not just advocacy for disabled people, but we're also advocating to disabled people and educating them, if I can put it that way. So it's an integral part of what we do, especially when it comes to networking. We have to sort of put the case very strongly. And as I say, it's amazing that the governments can look at disabled people. It is an anecdotal, I don't want to take too much time. But, these guys sort of were applying, and they said, well, the lift, you have to go up about 9 flights of stairs because the lift has been broken down for about a year. And so, and the guys turned around and said, well, I don't care. If you think I can do the job, then don't worry about the lift breaking down. So we were able to sort of just teach the guys to be able to understand that they need to just go for it. It doesn't matter. I mean, and that's been my attitude really. And I think Mark can attest to that, because we've been fighting about whether to be on the chair or not. Thank you. That's good.